For God so loved the world, he gave his only Son to die on Calvary's tree, from sin to set me free. Someday he's coming back, what glory that will be! Wonderful his love to me. The year was 1938, and I was on my way to meet, for the first time, George C. Stebbins, the gospel song composer. Mr. Stebbins had been a friend and associate of D.L. Moody, Ira Sankey, P.P. Bliss, Fanny Crosby, and many others of the early evangelists and songwriters. Now, in his 94th year, he was the only one left. As the mileage on the sign pointing to Catskill, New York, became less, the anticipation of meeting him grew greater, for I was going to meet the man who could tell me about the early pioneers of the faith from personal experience. No doubt he could tell me much about them that had never been written. And I was sure he would also give me some interesting stories of how his and many of the other gospel songs were written. I could hardly wait. At long last I arrived at Catskill, and after stopping for information as to where Mr. Stebbins lived, I found that his address most appropriately was on High Street. In a few minutes I had found a quaint little brick house. My search was over, and I was about to meet the man who would do much to inspire and encourage me to dedicate my life to the ministry of music. In fact, it was the first visit which would provide the inspiration for writing the most widely known and used song I have been permitted to write. Here is how it happened. My visit had come to a close, and I was on my way to a meeting in Oneonta, New York. Mr. Stebbins had drawn back the curtain of the past, and for 3 hours he had introduced me to men and women who before had been only names to me, but as we traveled memory's lane, it seemed that they again were alive, and I could hear them speak and sing. Why, at times I even thought I heard the happy and contagious laugh of Fanny Crosby as she, though blind, shed abroad her sunshine of joy and cheerfulness. We chuckled as Mr. Stebbins told of Mr. Moody singing on one note, and how he thought the pump organ had developed a cipher. Tears had filled our eyes as he told of his last goodbye to P.P. Bliss, who a few days later was killed in the great train wreck at Ashtabula, Ohio. And on we traveled, and each step gave testimony that these great saints had accounted it a privilege and an honor to serve the King of Kings. Humbly, but convincingly, Mr. Stebbins told me of God's working in his life, and how the inspiration had come to him to write so many of his songs. Then the time had to come to pull memory's curtain. I was to have more of these visits, for Mr. Stebbins lived to be 99 years old, but at the time I felt that this could be the last. I'd been on the mountaintop, and the inspiration and blessing of the 3 hours would never leave me. As I continued toward Oneonta, there arose within me a desire that has often been repeated through the years, a desire to be used of God, like he used these dedicated men and women of yesterday, not to be blessed so much personally, but to be a blessing to others. I began to review the great songs that God had permitted Mr. Stebbins to write. Would there be room for one more song, even though small, that I might write that could sing its way along with the songs of Stebbins, Crosby, Bliss, and others? As I drove along, I began to hum a melody, and soon words with a familiar theme began to fall into place. By the time I reached Oneonta, I had completed all but one phrase. The meeting was to begin in a few minutes, and so all I had time to do was to jot down the melody and the words that I had. I left these on the piano, and then rushed to church. At the time I was a guest in the Townsend home. In the family were 2 sisters, Grace and Frances. Grace was an invalid, and Frances an English teacher. While I was at the meeting that night, Grace, who was crippled, said to Frances, "I wonder what song Alice put on the piano." She and Frances had then gone over to investigate. They read my scribbled words, "For God so loved the world, he gave his only Son, to die on Calvary's tree, from sin to set me free. Someday he's coming back. And the next phrase was blank. And when I had concluded with, wonderful his love to me, they looked at the not-too-neat copy. Frances exclaimed to Grace, Al has left out a phrase. And with that she took the pencil I had left on the piano and wrote in the words, what glory that will be. God had used her to finish the song. When the song was published, I made sure that the names Frances Townsend was included, for had it not been for her, I feel sure that I would have put the song aside and perhaps never gotten around to finish it. Alfred B. Smith. And here's the credit to Frances Townsend. For God so loved the world, he gave his only Son to die on Calvary's tree, from sin to set me free. Someday he's coming back, what glory that will be. Wonderful his love to me.